After 2 days of chaos and fear on the streets of Beirut, today a demonstration of military superiority above them. Israeli fighters sounding sonic booms and releasing flares. To the south, a major wave of attacks on Hezbollah positions after the Israeli military said its chief of staff had approved new battle plans. All of this as Hezbollah's leader was starting his speech in response to a humiliating week.
The Israeli enemy targeted thousands of pages and they were detonated at the same time. The enemy crossed in this operation all the rules, laws and red lines. They didn't care about anything at all, not morally, humanely or legally.
It was Nasrallah who this year had mandated the use of pagers over smartphones for security reasons. Thousands of those devices and hundreds of walkie-talkies exploding over 2 days. Nasrallah calling it an unprecedented blow.
The Israeli enemy was aiming to kill no less than 5,000 people in 2 minutes without caring about any limits. And they have no problem with where people are killed and how they are killed.
Israel's military confirmed today that 2 of its soldiers had been killed by Hezbollah cross-border fire. Nasrallah pledging in his speech to continue what he called operations in the south until there was a ceasefire in Gaza. But he stopped short of announcing any escalatory retaliation for the pager and radio explosions.
Iran is concerned that Hezbollah capability could be degraded considerably by an Israeli massive offensive. Nasrallah is trying hard to sell a story to his people to justify avoiding a major escalation and sliding into a major conflict with Israel.
It's still unclear whether Israel's high-tech attack was a prelude to a major conventional offensive, or for now at least a substitute for one. As he did yesterday from Egypt, today from Paris, the US Secretary of State urging both sides back from the brink while work continues for a Gaza ceasefire.
We believe that remains both possible and necessary. But meanwhile, we don't want to see any escalatory actions by any party that make that even more difficult.
Israel's defense minister, though, for a second day talking about a shift in military focus from Gaza to Lebanon.
Over the past several days, we've held a series of important discussions. This is a new phase of the war. It includes opportunities, but also significant risks. Hezbollah feels that it's being persecuted, and the sequence of military and defense actions will continue.
And more evidence today, in case it were needed, how multifaceted the situation is. A septuagenarian Israeli businessman charged with conspiring with Iran to assassinate Gallant, or the head of Israeli security, or indeed the Prime Minister himself. In the West Bank, another spasm of violence as Israeli forces raided the town of Kabatia. At least 3 Palestinians reportedly shot dead. The Palestinian Health Ministry saying another 10 people were injured. And even as Israel says the center of gravity of its near year-long war is moving north to Lebanon, its army releasing footage of its troops fighting in Rafah in Gaza's far south.
Harry Forsyth reporting there. Well, Dr. Firas Abiad is Lebanon's health minister. I spoke to him earlier and asked him to update us on the casualties there after the week's attacks.
We have witnessed 2 attacks, one on the 17th and one on the 18th. The total casualty count up till now, we're reporting 37 deaths. That's including an 8-year-old female child and a 11-year-old male child. We also are reporting around 2,930 casualties. We have around 300 of those who are still in critical conditions. And up till now, we have performed over 1,000 operations. Most of the casualties that we witnessed on the first day were mainly in the face and affecting the eyes and the hand. A large number of those patients ended up losing their eyesight and also the function of at least one of their hands.
These are really terrible numbers. When was the last time that your health system was faced such a critical challenge?
I think the Lebanese health system, to be honest, ever since the financial crisis started, has been under a lot of strain. We had the financial crisis, then COVID, Then we had Beirut blast, where this was the third non-nuclear explosion in history. This is coming now at a very difficult times for Lebanon.
The Israelis have not admitted to doing this attack, but everyone is pointing the finger at them, and they frankly haven't denied it. Do you agree with Hassan Nasrallah, the leader of Hezbollah, that this is a declaration of war against your country?
I don't want to characterize it, but the position of the Lebanese government, since day one, has been that Lebanon does not want war, and I think that this is also the feeling amongst the vast majority of the Lebanese population. Now, having said that, clearly, what we have witnessed in the last 2 days, this indiscriminate attack, which affected a large number of civilians. People have seen the videos. There were devices exploding in markets, on the streets, among people in their cars. We've had, children, as I said, have died because of this. I think this is a major escalation. People are looking at it as a provocation. And I don't think that this will help going to a diplomatic solution.
I mean, diplomacy couldn't be further away from looking at the situation right now. And although there was no official declaration of war, does it feel like that to you? Does it feel like that to you, that you are caught in the middle of a war between Hezbollah and the Israeli government?
I don't think that, this is going to bring us into war, but definitely it is an escalation of an already very bad situation.
Because also, while Mr. Hassan Nasrallah was speaking, we could hear sonic booms, of low-flying Israeli jets over the city of Beirut, where you're speaking from. Those strikes are getting closer and closer to where you are right now.
Well, I must tell you that, I'm a surgeon who practiced, in the final bits of the Lebanese civil war. And, when I was doing rounds yesterday and the day before on hospitals and meeting people, the feeling I got is not a feeling of people in desperation or people in hopelessness or people scared. I got the feeling that these people have a feeling of indignation.
The Israelis want to sort out their situation, in the north of their country, where there are 60,000 people who are unable to live in their homes because of, artillery fire and missiles coming in from Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. Are you afraid that the Israelis are provoking this fight for their own reasons, for their own people, that is what they're determined to do, and there's not much you can do about it?
I am worried that our health system, already under a lot of strain, might not be able to withstand further escalation in hostilities and further escalation, especially if we are talking about a grand war or a major escalation. But that doesn't take away from the fact that, there is a tit for tat, and these events that we are witnessing, unfortunately, send wrong signals.
Minister Abiad, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Well, joining me now from Tel Aviv is the Israeli journalist Gideon Levy, who's a columnist for the Haaretz newspaper and a long-standing critic of the Israeli government. Gideon Levy, the Israeli government says this is a new phase of war. What do you think that looks like?
It looks like Israel wants a war. I mean, the messages that were sent yesterday and the day before in those thousands of devices was a very clear message. Israel wants a war, and maybe even a regional war. There's no other possible explanation for this.
I mean, it's almost a year since the Hamas attacks. The hostages are still not home, by and large. The northern residents on the border with Lebanon are still displaced. These are the justifications that the Israeli government is using. Is anyone buying that?
In Israel, yes. Most of the Israelis are still supporting this war. But it's quite astonishing that after this war, which didn't achieve anything for Israel, as you rightly say, Kathy, nothing was achieved for Israel. Israel is today in a much worse condition than before this war. And still Israel wants more of the same, another war, to solve another problem with another war, and only by war. It's really a very, very sick mindset. Instead of drawing the conclusion, we had now a war in Gaza, which was a catastrophe for both sides. The natural thing would have been maybe we can't solve everything by wars. No, you see Israel now running to the north in order to create even a worse war, because a war in Lebanon will make the war in Gaza as a summer camp. Don't be wrong about this.
Really? So is there any possibility of averting that larger war, an even greater catastrophe, if that's possible?
I don't know how. I wish I could tell you a scenario. I don't know how. Israel is very tough about it. Israel is not ready to stop the war in Gaza. Hezbollah declared clearly, and today again, Nasrallah repeated it, that the key is stopping the war in Gaza and obviously pulling out the troops from Gaza. Israel is not ready for this. In other words, Israel wants war with Lebanon.
I mean, Israel has reportedly submitted a new ceasefire proposal, but I mean, the events of this week put paid to that, don't they?
The events of this week, and I guess you referred to those two attacks in Lebanon, they are really wonderful for a nice Hollywood film. But when you really check it, I mean, it's really impressive. Israel knows everything and knows to find everyone. By the end of the day, two things must be said seriously. First of all, nobody knows what did Israel gain out of it. And secondly, by the end of the day, let's remember that those were terrorist actions. It was within civilian population. It's true that not many were killed, but you know, when people are being exploded in middle of markets, if the Palestinians or the Hezbollah would have done it, Israel would shout, terror, terror. So it is terror.
And when you look at the civilians killed and children as well, where does that leave Israel in the eyes of the world?
Oh, this you don't need to wait for this. The world saw this last year in Gaza and draw the conclusions. The only problem is that the Israelis didn't see this year in Gaza, because the media in Israel hardly show it to them. And the Israelis are still believing, most of them, if not all of them, that their army is the most moral army in the world and that we have the justification to do whatever we want after the atrocities of the 7th of October, which is totally wrong.
Hezbollah is now saying that it will mount a crushing response. Is there a lot of fear about what that will mean and what that will look like?
There is a concern, I wouldn't say fear, but there is a growing concern. But this concern follows us for the last year, each time from a different direction. There is a very heavy cloud over our heads of all of us Israelis. Some take it to fear, others take it to shame, others take it to really being concerned, and others see all this as an opportunity. Many Israelis, even tonight, speak about another war in Lebanon as an opportunity. After all the wars that Israel launched, and none of them brought Israel any kind of achievements, security, or anything else. Again, Israel wants another war. It's really hard to understand it.
Gideon Levy, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.